Hi again, friends. It's Sharon from Mad Paper Crush here. Today we're going to be making something utilitarian, something that I need a lot these days. And what is it, you may ask? It is a magnifying bookmark. So these fun junk journal style bookmarks have a little window in them with a magnifying lens in it so that you can keep it in your journal. It can look like a junk journal style, but it really has a good function. So I have been noticing as of late that I have a hard time with smaller words. And so having something magnifying around, I think will be really helpful. So I'm just going to grab, this is my little color wheel that I have here, and I'm just going to hopefully be able to show you how using this can magnify these words for you so that you could read, small print and things like that, either in your journal or in a book or something. So we are going to make them with die cuts. I'm going to show you that you can make them without a die cut. This was just cut using my craft knife. The window there was cut with my craft knife. And you don't even need to sew. Now I did sew this tab on, but I actually closed this one up with washi tape. So let's go ahead and get started and make some magnifying bookmarks. All right, so I'm going to be using just 2 pieces of cardstock, and this is a digital of mine. It's called Atlas that I'm going to be using. You could certainly just use scrapbooking cardstock, whatever you have on hand. And it doesn't need to be double-sided. It could be double-sided, but it's a good weight cardstock. It doesn't have to be real thick, but you want it to be sturdy. So that's what I'm going to be using for the base here. And then I'm also going to be using a die cut. So I'm going to be using this little shape here to create my window. But you don't need that either. You can just cut out a shape, punch out a shape, whatever you like. It just depends on, the size. So it might be hard, if you just have a circle punch to make, a 2-inch circle or something like that. You might want to try to cut something bigger with your craft knife or something like that. And then also, I'm going to be using this lens film. So this comes in a bigger sheet. So I've already made one to kind of test things out. But this is what's going to give us our magnification. So let me see if I can show you. So let's say we're looking at this word of Cambridge Drive there. So you can see when I put this down, as I bring it up, it should start to magnify those words for you. And what I have also found is that one side seems to work a little bit better than the other side. When you have it up. Now, obviously, both sides are going to be open, but if you use papers where you want to decide which is going to be the front and the back, you might want to just know what side of your film, does the best magnification for you. So for me, what I found with the lens paper that I have, and this isn't really paper, this lens plastic or whatever this is, it's the side that's textured. When that side is up, that side seems to work better for me. It does a much clearer magnification of the words. So when I make this, whatever I decide is the front for my papers, I will use the texture side up for my front of the magnifying piece. You can still obviously use it on the other side. I just think that it doesn't quite work as well. It's a little more glary and I don't know, just doesn't seem to work as well for me. But that's something that you can decide. Now I will link this film that I got in the description below if you're interested in taking a look at what I have to use as well. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, first I'm going to cut my papers down, and I'm basing the size of my bookmark on the cutout that I'm using. So this cutout, when I measure it, is about, I think it's about 4 inches high and about 3 inches wide. So pretty close, a little bit less than 3 inches wide. So I want my bookmark itself to be a little bit bigger than that. So I'm going to make the whole bookmark 5 inches tall because that'll give you a little room to hold it on the side, I think. And then about 4.5 inches wide. So not much wider than the template itself, but a little bit. So I'm going to choose the areas on these papers that I want, and thinking that this is going to be, you know, something I do to the side, I just want to take into consideration the width of the papers that I'm using, or the orientation of the papers that I'm using. So, you know, depending on where I decide to do this, like I kind of like that I would have some handwriting around this edge, maybe some of these flowers a little bit if I could. So I think what I do for this page, I'm going to measure from this edge over to 5 inches and then down to 4.5. So, so since we already talked about that one, I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I know that I want this to be 4.5 inches here. So just looking at where that is, I'm going to make sure that, I think that's what I wanted to do, 4.5 inches down. Yes, I think so. So I'm looking at, you know, what I see here, and then I'm just going to go ahead and make that cut as my first cut here. And then I decided I wanted to go 5 inches over this way. So I'm going to look at this, and now you can see that when I have it at 5 inches, I'm going to be cutting some of these flowers off. So what I might do, just to kind of have a little bit more of the flowers showing, I think I'm going to start over here and make my first cut so that I have flowers coming all the way to the edge over here. And then I'm going to measure my 5 inches away from here. So I am going to cut off some of this handwriting, but that's going to be okay because I know that I have some of the flowers there. So I think this is what I wanted to do. And for some reason, oh, I know what the problem is. Oh no, I don't know. Let me see. So this was my 5 inches wide, which I know I wanted, but it seems really wide for some reason. I don't think I wanted it that wide, unless maybe I was thinking about doing it 3.5 inches. So let me take this down. Maybe we'll do it 4 inches. So I'm going to cut this off a little bit. It just seems really tall to me for some reason. I don't know. Yeah, I think I like that better. Okay, so it's a little bit more of a rectangle, kind of close to where, you know, everything is here. So I'm probably going to center that somehow on there. So now I'm going to do the same thing with this piece, and I think I'm going to measure from this side and down this way. So now when I measure down this side, I'm just going to go ahead and do the 4 inches, since I figured out that was probably the true width that I wanted, and we'll do 5 inches over. And once again, if you wanted to change the pattern or something like that, you know, obviously you would just, you know, watch how you were cutting that down. But I kind of like it like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my die cut here. And when I cut the die cut, I am going to cut this as the pieces would be together. So I'm not going to cut them like this, because if this isn't exactly symmetrical, when I flip this paper over, my window is going to be off a little bit. So if I start with the papers how I want them to be when the project is completed, when I do my die cutting, it should come through, you know, kind of exactly how I want it to. So, and I won't have to worry about things being a little bit off if they, you know, if they're off. So I'm gonna step away and die cut those. But before I do that, I'm going to grab my cutter again, and I'm going to cut my centerpiece. So my lens, I'm going to cut my window piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it. Obviously, I need it to be, you know, bigger than this piece on both sides. I could make it completely as large as this piece just to make sure I covered everything, but you don't necessarily have to do that. So as we sew around the outside, you're going to need to be careful that your lens on the inside doesn't, you know, start shaking around and maybe come through the opening. So that's one thing you want to be aware of. And if you do make it as big as the piece of paper, then you could sew it in. So you have to be careful when you sew through this plastic, but you can actually do it. I have done it. So, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it down to be just about maybe a 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch less on either side of the paper, so that I don't have to worry about it sticking out, and that I could catch it into the sewing when I go around there. And then also, you know, kind of the other thing is adding this plastic in the middle will add some more stability to the piece itself. So once again, you have some options here. I'm going to go ahead and start this at 4, and then now you have to kind of get this started. Ooh, I think I did this before. You know what? I may have cut this with my craft knife, and that might be better than this. So let me see if I can do that. I may even try and use my rotary blade. Let's give that a go. I'm going to grab my, and I think I said I went to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches. I am going to go a little bit back from 5 inches because that was the full width. And as I told you, I wanted to do about 1/4 of an inch less. So let's see if this works. And that did work. I have my width now. Now I just have to do the other side to do the height here. So this is going to be, oops, what did I cut? I feel like I cut that a little small for that way. All right, let me try this again. So I'm going to make marks here so that I know what I'm doing. All right, let me grab a little grease pencil here. Okay, so I know that I want this to be about 1/4 of an inch less than the width here. So I'm just going to mark that here. Okay, and then for my height, I'll do the same thing. Turn it this way, line this up, and we'll do that about 1/4 of an inch less on this side too. Okay, so there's my 2 cuts. So I'm going to cut this one first so I don't cut that mark off. And I'm just going to line it up with my grid here. Try to get this fairly straight. Obviously your ends aren't going to show, so you don't have to be perfect. You could, you know, cut them with scissors if you want. That would work too, I believe. And then we'll cut this one off as well. Okay, so that looks better. So now you can see it's just a little bit smaller than the piece that I have, and that's what I want, especially because I want to be sure that my entire die cut, you know, ends up fitting this piece. So I'm going to go quick die cut these pieces, and then we'll put it all together. All right, we have our papers die cut, and you can see I have them matched perfectly since I did them together with them the way that I wanted them to be. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some distress, and I'm actually going to add some to the white sides so that if when I start sewing, I don't actually line them up great, I will be able to, you won't be able to see, you know, this stark white paper on the side. So I'm just going to do that on both sides, and then I'm also going to do around the outside edges as well as my inside edges to be sure all of that additional paper that hasn't been printed on is all covered up. Right, everything is distressed now. So these pieces are ready to go. This piece is ready to go. I just need to be sure I have my texture side up, that I want to put this on here. And then I'm also just going to grab a little piece of washi tape as I knock everything over. Whoa, really knock everything over here. I'm just going to grab a little piece of washi tape to try to hold this kind of right where I want it centered, because as soon as I pick this up, I know that it will, you know, shift to the bottom or something like that. So I'm going to use a very small, and actually I may even use 2, since I've got it very close to the edge. I want to be sure I don't go over the edge. So I'm just going to try to put this down just to, and all I want this to do is just barely hold it in place for me so that when I go to sew, this middle piece will stay where I want it. So I'm going to put a little piece over here too. And it's, you can see it's just barely grabbing the edges of the paper, but that will be enough to be sure I have that where I need it. Now, I need to make sure that I have my 2 pieces of paper correct. And as you can see here, I do not, I don't believe. So I'm going to turn this around, try to match this up again. And yes, that's the way this should go together. So before you sew anything together, you know, be sure you have it the way you want it. Now, if you don't have a sewing machine, or you don't like to sew or don't want to sew, you could just secure these edges with washi tape all the way around. So you could do corners like you would if you were wrapping, you know, just about anything to hold this together. Now, if you are going to use washi tape, I would suggest that you use an additional adhesive on there. So I would use maybe some glue stick or some 3-in-1 glue, or even just some white glue to be sure that it holds. Washi tape adhesive doesn't always stay permanent. So if you want to do it that way, you absolutely can. You don't need to sew, but I am going to sew just around the outside edges using a zigzag stitch to hold everything together. And I don't know if it will grab all the way around, but it will probably grab some of that plastic in there as well to hold it all together. So I'm going to go do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, I just wanted to give you one quick note. If you aren't going to sew your pieces together, if you're going to use tape or something else around the outside, and you're not going to catch your lens, your plastic, inside of anything, I would definitely recommend using either some really strong masking tape to hold it in place, so that once you get it all together, your lens doesn't slide around on the inside of the pocket. So you obviously just want to be sure you're not, you know, your tape doesn't show through anywhere. Or you could also use double-sided tape too. I think that would be a really great option as well. So just put down a couple pieces of double-sided tape, pull off the other side, and then put this, you know, very gently on top to make sure that your lens stays in place as you're finishing things up. So I just wanted to make sure I said that, since in mine, I was sewing the piece in so it wouldn't move. If you're not going to be sewing it in, make sure you use something else to kind of hold that lens in place. Okay, it's all sewn together. I love the way it looks. I added a little fabric tab to the side here just for fun because I thought it looked cute. And now I'm just going to grab one of my beautiful pieces of ledger paper here. I can read stuff. It's so exciting. Look at there's these little tiny words for stockholders, acknowledgments, and I can read that just great with my little magnifying bookmark. So there you have it, friends. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you make a magnifying bookmark for yourself. If you do, I'd love for you to tag me or comment below. Let me know how it turned out, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, friends. Bye-bye.